Hello, my name is Voya and welcome to my deep guide and another edition of Q&A. I've collected some of the questions that you guys been asking, so let's go. Well, if it has the same PPI as Remarkable 2, I don't see why I should buy the device in regards to Remarkable Paper Pure, especially if I would have to drop my Lamy. There are certain things that are in favor of Remarkable Paper Pure. First one, it's very lightweight and plastic build, and it is much easier to repair because it has that screw system so you can actually remove the back plate, and yeah, if you need servicing of the battery or something like that, that's something that can easily be done if Remarkable actually provides a replaceable battery, or at the very least it makes it much easier for them to repair your device quicker and all of that kind of stuff. You do get auto rotation and you do get noticeable overall platform-wise speed up and performance, and better deghosting performance than you had on the Remarkable 2. So if we're talking about just purely comparing Remarkable 2 and Remarkable Paper Pure, yes, there are improvements, but after 6 years, almost 6 years wait time, those improvements are definitely not something that I think people were expecting as a replacement for the Remarkable 2. I totally agree in the fact that, yes, 300 PPI would have been better. If you guys do like the front light, then that would also be a good one, because the front light that's being used on Paper Pro series, that one's quite nice, and that would be like an obvious upgrade for the Remarkable 3. I guess there's a reason why they haven't called it Remarkable 3 and that they're staying in the Paper Pure or the paper category, where you do have those, yeah, the main signature of it is basically that active pen and the way that the writing feel is there. But here again you have the issue where the Paper Pro Move and the Paper Pro are all having a much better writing latency than the Paper Pure. I think that it might be the case that Paper Pure is more targeted towards new users, not so much as an upgrade or a replacement for a Remarkable 2. Because in all honesty, if we're talking about Paper Pure replacing a Remarkable 2, you could make a very, very flimsy and thin argument for that, definitely, and it would have shaky legs, but it would hold. But it's not really the dominant factor here. I think that the main thing here is that Remarkable 2, unless I'm mistaken, is going to get to be discontinued because it's 6 years old. So you won't be able to buy it anymore. And then what you're going to have with Remarkable is just the Remarkable Paper line of devices: Pro, Move, and Pure. And in that lineup, the only monochromatic device that you have that's not used in the gallery, that's super slow and flickering and everything else, is going to be the Pure. So I think that's the much more important question here, is that where is Remarkable's line of devices leading? Are we ever going to have a Remarkable 3, or is Remarkable Paper now what we got? Because when Remarkable 2 gets to be completely phased out and out of production, that's what we are going to have: Pro, Move, and Pure. Amazing intro, Voya, thank you. I only wish the product lived up to it. At this price, new users will probably choose the Boost Go 10.3 Gen 2 for its versatility and 300 ppi screen, since the writing latency and screen resolution are practically unchanged, and I strongly preferred writing on the Remarkable 2. I likely just buy another Remarkable 2 secondhand for $300 or less. This feels like a major missed opportunity from Remarkable. I'm genuinely sad they couldn't keep their original momentum, a bit like Nokia. Regarding the Remarkable Pure, Paper Pure versus the Go 10.3 Gen 2 non-front lit, Yes, you do have a lot more functionality and a lot more power and a lot more value in the Go 10.3. But there is one glaring problem with that device, and that is the writing latency of the pen and the precision of the pen. While that pen for an active pen works better than the previous ones, which were basically unusable, except for the Tab XC, I think it was called. Yes, Tab XC. That one was fine. This one is absolutely usable. It produces okay results, but there are precision issues, as I was demonstrating in the Go 10.3 Gen 2, and there are inconsistencies issue with the digitizer, which is a consistent problem, and there's absolutely nothing that you can do about that. And these inconsistencies, when you try draw a diagonal line, and you just get like suddenly like squiggly offsets. These offsets are so large that if you're writing normal lines, the precision of what you're writing is going to be completely off, and in those areas, your handwriting is no longer going to be yours, and it's inconsistent across the area of the screen. Now, Remarkable Paper Pure is using an active technology as well, but it has that digitizer imprecision issue much better. So we don't have those huge offsets and things like that, and we have 37 something milliseconds writing latency on the Books Go 10.3 Gen 2 non-front lit versus 21 milliseconds on the Paper Pure. So that's definitely a thing that we will feel on a daily basis. Then you also have the issue of Books Go 10.3 Gen 2 having quite a bit of ghosting issues. Granted, you can map just a side flip gesture to full screen refresh and get rid of the ghosting, so definitely a way around it, but it is there and you have to find a way around it. While on the Remarkable Pure, it has quite good deghosting performance out of the box, which is good because it doesn't have manual control of the deghosting. So it's not really such a, no pun intended, black and white situation between these two. I think that they cater to completely different audiences, but I will just piggyback onto the previous question where it's like Remarkable 2 versus Pure. I think that a Remarkable 3 would have been a slam dunk and a much more successful product than the Pure is proving to be, because genuinely Pure is not a bad product, but it ain't sexy. It's not sexy. It's going to be difficult for Remarkable to market it, and it's not going to sell itself. They're going to have to put in a lot of work to sell it, but it is a device that has plenty to offer. I just think that the pricing is $50 too high. That's, I think, the main problem that this device has, because the pricing of the Go 10.3 and just on paper specifications and generally the value that you get for money in the Go 10.3 is more and better on the Go 10.3 than the Pure if, and this is an enormous if, you are willing to contend with the book's user experience shenanigans and pains. So that's my 2 cents at least on that one. I do have to add that one of the best improvements for me, this is, I think, is again regarding to the Remarkable Pure, would be the addition of the 802.1x authentication for wireless protocols. I am not able to have access to company network, but have to use the hotspot on my phone to be able to download documents for work or any updates. Otherwise, I have to take the device home to connect and update periodically. Yeah, that's definitely a huge plus, but it's also talking a little bit about the problem of refreshing hardware in such long time intervals. So for example, yeah, Remarkable 2, 2020, and now 26, we get the Paper Pure. Standards are going to change, needs are going to change, and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's a very important point that you bring up, and thank you for bringing it, because it is a genuine value for certain users who rely on something like that if you're going to consider upgrading from 2 to Pure. Tempting. I liked my Remarkable 2, but was too scared to travel about with it, and it's never left my house. I bought a Supernote because it was more durable. The only issue now is that pen. I loved using my Stedler Jumbo on the Remarkable 2. Now you can't use passive. I did prefer the Folio open and close feature, but this might bring me back to get a Pure. Interesting points as well, and I really do value the perspectives that you guys actually bring to the table, because especially with a product like the Remarkable Pure, I think it's really important to hear all the different perspectives. I can only give you my own perspective, and maybe I can try to the best of my ability to kind of widen a little bit outside, but the true perspectives of how wide of a spectrum we're talking about is going to come from you guys as well. So this is why I'm including all of these questions, to kind of try and pinpoint different aspects of Remarkable Pure proposition, because it's coming directly from you guys. So from wireless networks and all that kind of stuff, getting to these things like the durability and how you actually feel with using the device. For me personally, I can definitely associate with that, and that's why I prefer Manta to Go 10.3. It just feels so much more freeing to use than a Remarkable 2, for example, or a Books Go 10.3. And the same thing goes with the Remarkable Paper Pure. Automatically, as soon as you start using it and holding it in the hand, the weight, the build, everything else, you just know that it's supposed to be, you hope at least, is going to be more durable than the Remarkable 2, which was beautiful, but also precious. Glass on the back, glass on the front, metal all around. None of that stuff likes to be flexed, twisted, or anything like that. With one asterisk here, and that's like, I still prefer the Manta, even though it's genuinely much more expensive than the Pure. Absolutely, no question about that. But it's also much more functional and a bigger display and 300 ppi and blah, blah, blah. The main advantage that I see it having is that it has no glass at all, because the screen in it is also flexible. So that's a plastic screen there, and the screen on the Pure is a glass screen. So durability aspect and freedom aspect, that's something that does still stay in my head regarding Remarkable Pure. And from that aspect of having a glass screen, and if you want to have a long longevity of a device, to have it for a long time, then the Folio to me makes much more sense, because it's going to protect the device in a much better way. I totally agree. None of those options are sexy, and they may seem, and to some are, a genuine step back. No disputing that, because it's what you prefer to use, of course. And we no longer have the option of using a keyboard folio, type folio, for example, because there's no pogo pins unless they unlock Bluetooth functionality for the Pure. But as a package, on its own, Pure makes sense. It starts having a lot of problems when you put it in the context of Remarkable 2, Go 10.3 Gen 2, then yeah, it becomes a shaky proposition, but not completely without its merits. Who in the world did they consult with in order to develop this dinosaur of a product? The sleeve is useless and ridiculous, not to mention a step backward. Who wants to go through all the trouble instead of simply flipping the folio back? Thanks for the review. Nothing new here, nothing exciting, nothing. Yeah, I've discussed the folio thing. I agree, like if that's what you're looking for, sure, but there are use cases and perspectives to not overlook regarding the carry folio versus the flipbook cover. That being said, nothing exciting. I think you hit the nail on the head right there by saying, those two words, nothing exciting. And I think that's the main problem with Remarkable Pure, as far as I'm concerned, as what I can see. Remarkable 1 was very exciting proposition because it was something completely different and new, and yeah, it was very exciting. Remarkable 2 was even more exciting because not only did you have that functionality, but now the packaging itself was desirable, really exciting on every front. And now, from the Gallery 3 disappointments in the Pro and the Move, even people who are the biggest die-hard Remarkable fans will admit and understand that the Pro and Move foray into the gallery display is problematic. Yes, it has a lot of value, absolutely, and I've acknowledged that a lot, but it's a problematic thing with the flickering displays and the longevity and the problems with those displays, etc., etc. And then after that, to go into something as vanilla as you can possibly be, which is the Remarkable Pure, then it becomes a bit of a problem, because it's running a risk of just going like a launch and nothing. I'm afraid that it might actually get trampled by the competition that's just speeding up and doing things a lot differently, especially with the price. If Remarkable Pure was at least $50 cheaper, but if it was like $100 cheaper, then it would be absolutely impossible to ignore, and it would become this thing that you go like, yes, it's budget, but it costs this much, and it's like a no-brainer type of value because you get the Remarkable platform, you get all of this. But the price is a smidge more than the Go 10.3 Gen 2, and that is genuinely a more exciting product, pretty much on every respect. Yes, it has a lot of problems, books-related issues, which we talked about, but it is interesting. So, yeah. Just buy an iPad is my take. I have about 10 of these e-ink tablets, and the iPad still rules them all for me. I don't really understand why, if you have 10 e-ink devices, why do you keep buying them, and why do you compare them to an iPad? Because none of them are supposed to be or intend to be a replacement for an iPad. So I think that there's like a bit of a misunderstanding here, because it's like trying to replace an orange with a banana. They're not the same kind of thing, and they're not supposed to do the same kind of thing. So yeah, your take may be just replace it with an iPad, and thank you for sharing that. My response to that for other users who don't share that view or are maybe kind of thinking is that it's not supposed to replace your iPad. It's supposed to fill in the gap that an iPad cannot give you. And that is then a very, very subjective type of a thing, where you have to kind of see like what it can and can't do and what are your needs, etc., etc. If it was a question between a laptop and an iPad, then I think it's a far more meaningful comparison that you can do, like, okay, well, just use an iPad instead of a laptop, because an iPad with a keyboard especially, it can do a lot of things. It can't do everything, but it can do a lot of things, and that I think is a much more fair comparison than an iPad versus any of the e-ink tablets, because they're just too different. The main reason not to buy this product, Remarkable Pure, is that there's too great of a risk that Remarkable won't survive. They've lost their way, and they have developed a product without quality. Oof. Remarkable 2 had quality, but there's no way I'll buy this. Without enough buyers, the risk is high that they'll fold and buyers will be left with no support. Thank you for sharing your perspective. But as I said in the comment as well when I replied to your question, I'm wondering like what your definition of quality is, because Remarkable 2 looked really nice and it was really well made, but it did have quality issues because the screens were breaking, the batteries would kind of inflate, and the design was such that the casing was so inflexible that you would have spontaneous cracking of the screens because the battery would inflate a little bit and goes against the glass back, which has no give, and the screen itself that's on top of it has more give, and therefore the battery just kind of pushes it, it cracks, and the end result is for you, like you leave the device in the evening, you pick it up in the morning, and it's dead. So that to me is not a reflection of a quality. Remarkable Pure, for example, we'll see how it reflects, but it has the potential to be a much better design than the Remarkable 2 is, if longevity is what you're looking for. Mainly because it's of a plastic build, it has more thickness, it has more breathing room, more space, more everything, because they've learned quite a bit as a company, I guess, and as a team from the stuff that they've had before. Then again, I would have to say that we've had like tons and tons of instances of Remarkable 2 screens cracking. Then we've had so many stories with people going up to 7th replacement refurbished unit of the Remarkable Paper Pro. Pro Move seems to be a little bit more reliable, or it sells less, but there's less stories at least of failed screens and failed devices with the Pro Move. But both Remarkable 2 and Paper Pro are not reliable devices whatsoever. How about this? How many of Remarkable 1 stories completely failing like that did you hear? I haven't heard of many, and my theory would be this. Remarkable 1 was using a flexible screen, a plastic screen. All of the other ones from Remarkable 2 onwards are using a glass screen, which is far more fragile and prone to cracking. As far as the Pure goes, what I don't understand is that if you're going to double down and you're not going to go with the newest and latest technology with a 300 ppi and you're going to go with 227, at least then go with it being a flexible screen so that you bring back that super ruggedness reliability. And then it's like, yeah, it's cheap, but it's super reliable. And that would be a different story. This way, you get like a mix of this weird mix on a Remarkable Pure where everything around the screen is the cheap version and the screen itself in the pen is the expensive version, which is also the fragile version. How's that gonna work? I'm not really sure. The intro made me think Bentley with a Russian accent. Yeah, this is where my age and I guess my decision to not really engage with the internet that much comes into play, because I have no idea what you are referring to. If I had to guess, I would have to guess that it's either a meme or some sort of a TikTok or Instagram kind of video that people are doing that. But since I don't have TikTok and I don't use TikTok and I don't have Instagram and I don't use Instagram, then I guess I'm out of the loop. And oddly, that actually makes me really, really happy that I have no idea what you are referring to. Can't believe they got rid of the Type Folio option here. Then I went with no pogo pins either. And yeah, that's what makes me sad, so no future possibility. On the surface of it, yes. But here's the thing, the SoC systems in all of these, they already come pre-built in with a Bluetooth receiver and the module is there. So it's in on Remarkable Paper, Pro, Move and on the Pure. So the Bluetooth capability is absolutely there. It's just simply not enabled and it's not utilized by the operating system or by the Remarkable. But the hardware functionality, if I am not mistaken, is absolutely there. And I'm not looking into hacks and things like that, but I think maybe, if I'm not mistaken, I think that there was a hack that was actually exploring that would maybe try to enable keyboard functionality with the Bluetooth and stuff like that. But the main thing here is that future expandability via pogo pins is not possible, but wirelessly it certainly is absolutely possible. But it does come down to Remarkable making a decision if they want to do it or not. Honestly, I think that it would be a really, really smart move on their end to actually unlock that and allow users to use their own Bluetooth keyboards with their devices, especially for the Paper Pure, because it has no pogo pins, so obviously they do not have a Type Folio in plan for this device. So at the very least, then allow the option to the user to use the Bluetooth keyboard that they would like. Now, whether or not they're going to do that, I know I just inhaled, but I wouldn't hold my breath. I really respect them for the price of the bundle specifically, but 227 ppi is kind of inexcusable for me. Not looking to switch from books, but still 227 is rough. I agree. I really don't get that point. And furthermore, I'm not really sure, like, if the longevity is the idea. And you want the device to last for, I don't know, how long? 6, 8, 10 years. That's what they're usually saying, up to 10 years. That means that you have to be able to source the parts, the 227 ppi screens, for production of Pure for the next 10 years, where already now we have at least, I think about 4 years, something like 4 years of 300 ppi screens pretty much being there. I don't personally know more. I don't have any insight into all of that. So if they have a special deal with e-ink, since they are actually having a custom stack, so maybe if you have a custom deal with e-ink, then you can actually source these for the foreseeable future. But that's also something that I'm kind of thinking like, okay, but if you're going to do that, why at 227 ppi? And then do so much work to try and compensate for the shortcomings of the choice to begin with. If it was to cut down on the price, I don't think that it has worked, because it's still too expensive for 227 ppi. I bet you that the people would not have a problem with a $50 more expensive or $70 more expensive device if it had 300 ppi and if it had a front light. Then, yeah, I think that people would have purchased it, because they purchased Paper Pro, Paper Pro Move, Remarkable 2. All of those were more expensive than the than the Paper Pure. But yeah, with the competition, I think it missed the mark. So there you go. Those are the questions. Entirely, pretty much, I wanted to dedicate this one to Remarkable Paper Pure, because there were a lot of questions and a lot of opinions and a lot of important aspects that you guys were kind of addressing. And I think it was important to kind of maybe collect them all and address them in one spot. So thank you so much for watching. Stay safe, stay healthy, and see you in the next video. Bye.